Well, Krishnan, we have spent the summer reporting from protests across the country where thousands of people have marched demanding justice for the killing of black men and women at the hands of mostly white police officers. Well, that came to a head last night when demonstrators turned out across dozens of US cities. There was briefly some violence here last night, and the man who shot those two police officers has since been arrested and charged within 12 hours. And that for many underscores what they see as the big injustice here, that when harm is done to police, justice is swift. But when plainclothes police shoot and kill a black woman in her own home, it takes a grand jury 6 months to conclude that they did nothing wrong and that they were simply acting in self-defense. And a warning that some viewers may find some of the scenes in my report distressing. There was no police body cam video from the night Breonna Taylor was shot by officers who burst into her home.
Shots fired, shots fired.
But at the protests ignited by the state's decision not to directly charge them for her death, the Louisville Police Department was streaming live on its Facebook page.
Got an officer down.
Officer down, they're backing officers out.
Officer down, take cover.
It would soon become clear there were 2 officers down. They were shot and wounded as they approached a large crowd half an hour before the citywide curfew would begin.
Both officers are currently undergoing treatment at University Hospital. One is in alert and stable. The other officer is currently undergoing surgery and stable.
It had been a long and emotional day of unrest, and not only in Louisville. In Seattle, an officer appeared to roll a bike over the helmet of a protester on the ground. And in Denver, a car drove into a small crowd.
Hey! Oh my God!
The woman it hit escaped with just a scraped wrist. But most of the demonstrations that broke out across the US were peaceful, march after march, all with the same message: justice for Breonna Taylor. A name that's come to epitomise America's summer of unrest. Her death a touchstone for those demanding an end to police brutality. And this was their turning point. Frustration and outrage that had been building since March, after protesting for 6 months since the hospital worker was shot dead in her own home by police in a botched drug raid. When those fighting for justice were told no officers would be charged over her death, they took to the streets.
We seem to have 2 justice systems in America, one for black America and one for white America. Nothing seems to say that Breonna mattered.
An hour after the curfew took effect and riot police move in to disperse the crowd.
This is the Louisville Metro Police Department. Under Kentucky state law, this is an unlawful assembly, and I command all persons so assembled here to immediately and peacefully disperse.
So you're not going to leave the streets this evening?
No, that's over.
The curfew's in place, they're clearly telling you to go.
That's fine. Our voices are still not heard. It's like no one's listening to us, so that makes me frustrated.
It don't matter though.
They're angry too.
Because all the judges, all the lawyers, not all of them, but most of them is part of their clique.
Now that no one is getting charged and stuff, that's only making us angrier. That's only making us want to do more stuff, want to stay out later, not listen to them and stuff. So,
Do you intend to leave?
No.
Tell me why not.
Because why should I leave when they don't respect my life? You know what I'm saying? Why should I respect the words that they say when I'm just another statistic to them? You know what I'm saying? Does that make sense?
And what about the grand jury verdict today? What's your response to that?
To be honest, I'm not surprised with the outcome because they've been doing this for years, and it goes deeper than this police system. It goes all the way down to the White House, even deeper than that.
The police are moving in behind me, as you can see, slowly trying to push the protesters back. For now, it seems to be working. The small number that are still here are being pushed around that corner there, but they are staying, they are still digging in. We followed them as they moved quickly to cut the demonstrators off, rifles held aloft. The 2 lines of police then came together in a pincer, and the protesters were eventually encircled. So this is how it ends. They have got the protesters in there, trapped behind me, and they are picking them off one by one. They had dared to hope that this time would be different, that the police would be held accountable for the death of Breonna Taylor, that the law would eventually come down on their side. The reality is, it didn't. Instead, the death of the 26-year-old black woman was described by officials as a tragedy, but not a crime.
Siobhan Kennedy in Kentucky. Well, Donald Trump came here this morning to join those paying their respects to Ruth Bader Ginsberg, the liberal Supreme Court justice who died last week. For 2 days now, people have been queuing to honour and say thank you to this extraordinary woman. But when they saw the president, many were furious he'd come. Democrats are enraged that Donald Trump intends to appoint a new conservative justice before the election, which may have profound consequences for America, especially on women's rights to abortion and the outcome of any election dispute. Now, the protests seen in Kentucky were echoed around the country, including here in Washington, as people marched chanting "No justice, no peace" in more than a dozen major cities. But what has really alarmed many people here was Donald Trump's refusal in a press conference to commit to a peaceful transition of power should he lose the election. It follows his repeated claims that there will be massive fraud with postal voting.
Well, we're going to have to see what happens. You know that I've been complaining very strongly about the ballots, and the ballots are a disaster.
I understand that, but people are rioting. Do you commit to making sure that there's a peaceful transfer of power?
We want to get rid of the ballots, and you'll have a very peaceful. There won't be a transfer, frankly. There'll be a continuation. The ballots are out of control. You know it, and you know who knows it better than anybody else? The Democrats know it better than anybody else.
Well, joining me now live is Cornell Belcher, a political strategist and pollster who served the Democratic Party and the polling teams for both Obama presidential campaigns. Thank you for joining us. No matter what Donald Trump's intention with these comments are, and it may be distraction from coronavirus and the economy, what do you think the political effect is?
Well, I don't think they're distraction. And I think when the president of the United States projects his intent not to peacefully leave the office, I think we have to take that very seriously. Because this is a man who, by the way, there's nothing in his background or sort of his behavior that says he abides to normalcy and traditions and the law. So when he says that when he's not, planning on peacefully leaving office, I think your viewers and the world should look that America is in turmoil, and we may not have a peaceful transition of power after this election. And what does that mean? I mean, the turmoil and the chaos that's going to bring about, it's going to be great.
But what do you think is the effect of the turmoil and chaos we are seeing right now? Last night, I followed the protests through this city for over an hour. I mean, are the protesters, especially when there is some violence, as there was in Kentucky last night, counterproductive to their cause? Are they playing into Donald Trump's hands?
That's a good question. First, I want to say, we need justice for Breonna. But I also want to say that my heart and prayers goes out to the family of those officers who were shot. In this country, injustice often begets violence, and we've got to bring a stop to this, because we have to bring a stop to the injustice. But at some point, it politically, it is problematic, because Donald Trump is in fact trying to scare a certain segment of America that that he's the only one who can protect the country, and that the rioters are out to destroy the suburbs. I mean, he said as much. So politically, we will find out if in fact the political and tribal scare tactics of Donald Trump, which, by the way, in this country, scaring white Americans that people of color are going to be a threat to them and their power, has always worked in this country. And we will see very shortly if that is successful. I think when you look at how far behind he is in the polls and how he's losing, better educated white Americans in this country, I think this might be a time for change.
And just briefly, I mean, we're here at the Supreme Court. That's going to be critical, isn't it? If there is a dispute and if he gets a conservative appointee, he thinks he can win it.
Well, that's why I say, look, you should brace your viewers and much of the world for the probability that we may actually have a failed democracy in this country. And I know that's startling, and I don't say it easily, but you have a president who is refusing to say he's going to leave office. You have a president who's vocally trying to undermine the credibility of our electoral process, and at the same time trying to, smashing normalcy and tradition, trying to pack the courts with justices that'll be on his side. If this is not a recipe for losing our democracy, what is?